I think it's an excellent idea. I think it's more of a long-term answer than a short-term answer.
He's the most decorated US fighter pilot since the Vietnam War. Colonel Dan Hampton flew 151 combat sorties, taking part in the First Gulf War, Kosovo and the war in Iraq. He backs the idea of giving Ukraine Western jets, particularly F-16s, but says it'll take time.
We could put some of their more experienced pilots into what we call a short course. All right, which means, probably 4 to 6 months. That's what we do with guys who transfer from other types of airplanes, like an F-15 to an F-16, or if we were going to go from an F-16 to an F-35. But we already know how to use sensors and advanced radars and those weapons, so it's more just getting used to the specific setup in whatever cockpit you're going into. These guys have nothing like that. I mean, if you ever looked into a MiG-29's cockpit or even a Su-27's, I mean, it's just clunky, big round gauges, and they still have to move switches, and it's not, plainly wasn't set up with a pilot, in mind. The Ukrainians could certainly do it, but it would take more than it would take, to cross-train them than, say, for an American or a Brit or a Western-trained pilot.
Colonel Hampton says giving F-16 would allow Ukraine to suppress Russian air defences and provide close air support to troops on the ground, something they now lack.
A fully trained Block 50, Block 60 type F-16 pilot. He's quite capable of dealing with the surface-to-air missiles, either evading them or jamming them or, in fact, killing them. The problem with killing them is I think most of those systems are back across the line in Russia. So they're shooting into the Ukraine, and whether or not you go into Russia and attack is a political issue. So it can do all of that. It can deal with the SAMs, it can deal with the air-to-air threat, and most importantly, and what the Ukrainians really need right now is close air support to do more of a joint combat arms approach, which is how we do things and you do things, where air power is used in conjunction with tanks, which is used in conjunction with infantry, all right? And that's not really possible right now. The Russians aren't doing it either, which doesn't surprise me because they're cabbage heads and they don't think like that.
The colonel says rather than retrain Ukraine's existing fighter pilots on F-16, the West should help build a new generation of Ukrainian aviators.
I think a better short-term answer, in addition to the anti-aircraft systems I discussed, would be that they identify very young pilots that are maybe ready to go into flight school, all right? They're not currently flying combat missions in the Ukraine, and they send them to the United States in this case to go through our pilot training program and then go through the F-16 program from start to finish. That'll take 2 years.
So who would fly the jets while the Ukrainians are training? Colonel Hampton says private contractors, including himself, could fill the gap.
If they do decide to go with the F-16 and they get somebody to give them to them right now, they still have to have the pilots, which is where my comments came from. The only way you're going to get that is by hiring private military contractors who are already F-16 pilots.
And who are those people? Do they exist?
Oh yeah, they exist. And it isn't just Americans. There's also, you look at all the countries that fly F-16s, there's a pool of former military pilots that could be acquired for something like this.
And you stand by the comment that you go yourself?
Sure, why not?
2 Ukrainian pilots were recently sent to Arizona for testing on an F-16 simulator. While the US government has so far refused to send F-16, other countries that fly it, like Poland, are less resistant, at least to the idea. Will it happen? Well, that's a political decision. Colonel Hampton, though, firmly believes it should, and is even prepared to put his own life on the line to see it happen. Simon Newton, Forces News. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.